Gracious and beautiful God, Father, you are here, and we are here. Lord, may we be here together. May our hearts be aligned with your heart, O God. And may the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. A week ago on Friday, and then all day Saturday, I attended the Diocesan Convention, and the topic and the theme of the convention was mission. What are we doing in the world, and how can we be the light and the salt in the world? There's a decline in the church. It's been happening for 50 years, and the church is catching on now. We're like, what are we going to do? The average Episcopal church has 58 people sitting in their pews on Sunday. 72% of Episcopal congregations are 100 or less on Sunday. Only 4% have an average Sunday attendance of 300 or more. So rather than trying to get people to fill our walls, the church has decided that, hey, why don't we go out in the world and be Jesus? And so we call that being missional. And that was the whole theme of the church, of the conference. Well, last Sunday we had our annual meeting, where we celebrated all that God has done through us in the past year and looked ahead of where maybe we need to grow. What are some of the challenges? What is God calling us into? What is our mission and ministry for the next couple of years? Well, the most energizing and spirited part of our meeting, I think, and I was excited about this, was about what do we do beyond the walls of the church? How do we be the church in the world? How are we sharing the loving, life-giving, liberating good news of God in our community? I showed a video from our presiding bishop, Michael Curry, and he calls the gospel of Christ, he calls it the loving, life-giving, liberating good news. And so we talked about how we can share that. And then, how are we being the loving, incarnational presence of God in the world? As followers of Jesus, as Christians, as Episcopalians, how are we letting our light shine, if you will, in College Park, in Orlando? You know, Jesus said that the greatest thing that you can give your life to, in Rite One we call it the summary of the law, is to love God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your strength, all of your mind. Love God with all that you are, and to love your neighbor as yourself. The greatest thing, the greatest way to live according to Jesus is to love God, to love others, and to serve the world. And we explored that, and it was a very vibrant and energetic conversation, and I was excited because so many good ideas came about. And that's the heart of these lectionary readings today. These lectionary readings are intended to fill and transform us, all of us, as we are. Because of what they do a couple things. One, they address our identity, who we are fundamentally as human beings, who we are fundamentally as followers of Christ, as Episcopalians, as Christians. And secondly, they remind us of the powerful privilege, I'll say it again, privilege, and the awesome responsibility of being Christ's disciples in the world. Love God, love others, and serve the world. Psalm 112 that we just chanted suggests that greatness is to be measured not in how much we have, but in what we give away. Now, this is God in the psalmist. Greatness is not measured in how much we have, but how much we give away. In God's eyes, according to the psalmist, greatness is counted in the currency of compassion, mercy, and generosity. Isaiah 58 that Mary Ruth just read, and great job, by the way, is pretty, I don't know if y'all caught that. We read this on Ash Wednesday as well. It's a divine wake-up call for God's people to worship in a way that leads them to care for the hurting. Isaiah, the prophet, was addressing former exiles of Babylon who had been set free, Israelites. And they wanted to be great again. And see, they were outwardly, they had been devoutly religious. And they performed all the religious rituals daily. But there was a huge gap that existed between their religion and them trying through religion to appease God, if you will, to get God's attention, to get God's approval, to get God's blessing. There was a huge gap between their fasting and all their rituals and what they were living in the world. There was a huge gap between their religious beliefs and their actual way of life. See, they hadn't experienced yet, I don't think, that 18-inch drop. Y'all know the 18-inch drop, right? Y'all know what the 18-inch drop is? No? Yeah, that's where it goes from your head to your heart. And it changes you. And sometimes that 18-inch drop, that journey from your head to your heart, is the longest journey of all. And so Isaiah's talking to them, or God speaking through the prophet. And when God speaks through prophets, they usually want to kill them. But anyhow, the bottom line is that all their religious activity was about God serving their agenda instead of them serving God's agenda. And they were kind of wondering why God didn't seem to be paying any attention to them. Why God was kind of ignoring them, if you will. Well, and they were questioning, hey, we fast. We do these things. How come you're not blessing us? You know, it's kind of true for congregations as well. You know, we can get caught up in just the religion, if you will, and our traditions and our rituals, and we forget what God had created us to be and what God intended for us to be. Why do we fast, but you do not see? And the prophet, God speaks to the prophet, and he says, look, you serve your own interest on your fast day. You're pointing at fingers at one another. We know who the ones are to blame, right? Right, it's them. It's never me. And so you're pointing the fingers, you're gnashing, you're being negative and nasty, and you want me to bless you. And you're wondering why all this religion's not working for you. He says, if you want to be great, if you really want to be great, what I'm interested in seeing you doing is this. Share your food with the hungry. That's the way to greatness in God's eyes. Invite the homeless poor in your home. That's the way to greatness in God's eyes. Put clothes on the shivering, cold, ill-clad people. Be available to your own families. This is God's way of being great. And the prophet, God speaks through Isaiah, and he says, do this, and the lights will turn on, and your lives will turn around at once. You want to get God's attention? He just told us how to do it. Exciting worship experiences, as wonderful as they are, and as beautiful as they are. Educational programs, profound spiritual retreats, as great as all these things are, will be empty unless they result in turning our hearts to those in need. And that's what Isaiah was trying to get the people to do. Wake up. See, this is the point Jesus is making in the gospel reading this morning. And it's really good news. It's beautiful. It's an invitation to be who we were created to be. See, crowds have gathered to see the one they had heard about, this Jesus guy. They've come to listen, to learn, many of them to be healed, some of them to be fed, some of them were broken in exile of hurt and pain and exclusion and all kinds of other things that were happening. And they came to hear this man speak and get their lives put back together again. They've come in search of meaning and direction and purpose. And I think in some ways that's what we all do here, right? I mean, I do. I mean, you know, on some degree, right? And Jesus said this to the crowds, to the ones that have been in captivity, the ones that have been exiled and are now home, exiled through pain, exiled through suffering, exiled through exclusion, exiled through what we call sin and brokenness. And he looks at them and he says this, let me tell you why you are here. Let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. You are here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. He says, keep an open house. Be generous with your lives by opening up to others. Now listen, you'll prompt people to open up to God, this generous Father in heaven. See, Jesus presents a spiritual dilemma to the people. He says, we are something that we might not realize yet. Now think about that. He is saying to you and to me and those crowds, you are something that you may not realize. We are a potential that may have not been actualized yet. We are a high calling that may have not been heeded. Jesus says this to you. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Jesus tells us who we are before he tells us what to do. Richard Rohr says, we do not think ourselves into a new way of living. We do not think ourselves into a new way of living. We live ourselves into a new way of thinking. Jesus says to the crowd, you are the one who brings out the flavors of this world. You are the one who brings light into this world. Go be who and what you are. It's a promise. This is who we are, the truth, according to Jesus, of who we really are and what we're created for. Because righteousness, that word righteousness in God's eyes, goes back to the prophet Isaiah, and it looks like sharing food with the hungry, helping the homeless poor, putting clothes on the broken and the cold, being open and loving to our families. You are this result of the world, of the earth. You are the light of the world. You know, I have a night light. Katrina doesn't like it, but I'm scared of the dark, so no, it's a Superman. No, just kidding. It's in my hallway. I bought it at Ace Hardware when I moved here, right? So when all the lights off in the house and it's dark, and I need to get up and walk through the hallway or whatever, there's that little light. And it's amazing what that little light, how much light, how it can illuminate the darkness of my home. A little light can go a long way. Jesus says that you are the light of the world. The response to the division, to the darkness, to the pointing of fingers, to all of that, the pain in this world, is to be who you are, light. You, Jesus says, are the seasoning that adds flavor and transforms human activity. Jesus is essentially saying to us, you're a gift. You're a gift. Did you come in here expecting to be told that you're a gift? That God speaks through Jesus and tells you how beautiful and how important and how much you matter and the difference that you can make in this world, that you are the light of the world, that you are the salt of the earth, and that's the truth of who we are, helping people see God's life in theirs. And we do that in a million ways. There's more people in this room that are living this into the world, but that's who we are, and we do it in a million different ways. Perhaps it's looking at another human being in the eye and speaking a kind word instead of a word of division instead of a negative word, but something positive and hopeful, acknowledging this person, just like you, are created in the image of God. And that you look at them and you don't see the things that you dislike, but you see them as one who is created in the very image of God, just as you are. It's generosity with your time. And maybe it looks like social and intellectual capital. You know, all your connections and all of your education and all of your experience, that you use that to make a difference in the life of someone who may be homeless, down on their luck, for whatever reason, someone who's poor and hungry, that you are being the light of the world, that you are the salt. It might be simple as giving a pair of socks to a homeless person to warm their toes in the chill of the night or in the early morning. It might look like saying, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm truly, truly sorry. Forgive me. Because when we do that, according to Jesus, we are being who He claims we are. Salt and light. It's praying that God will bless those that you don't like with all the good gifts you want for yourself and those you love. It is the faithfulness and commitment to listen, to be available, to spend time with those who are hurting and grieving. It might be not just giving a can of soup, but you may be the light that goes out and advocates for the homeless and the hurting and the poor, to turn whatever it is upside down, that changes that and ushers in the kingdom of God for that person. There are a million different ways that we do this. But He says, when you're doing these things, you are loving God, you are loving others, and you are serving the world, for you are the light. You are the salt of the earth. Go and be who you are, Jesus is saying. Go and live into the truth of who you are and what you were created for. And this, God promises. Do this, and the lights will turn on, and your lives will turn around at once. Thanks be to God. Amen.